The neo-Confederate turn of this administration continues. And we know that Kris Kobach's incredible reach on sort of a giant national national voter suppression commission is stumbling. States aren't cooperating. They're not agreeing to turn over this kind of information. But Talking Points memo reports that even as that effort may be faltering, and we still need to look at that effort, the Sessions Department of Justice is basically returning to Bush administration policies which disenfranchised and suppressed voters. Now, I'll just quote briefly from Talking Points memo, and then we'll get to UWAS. Led by Attorney General Jeff Sessions, who will seek a scale back to access the ballot with an approach that has its antecedent in the scandal-plagued Justice Department of George W. Bush. It was signaled clearly in under-the-radar letter sent by the DOJ to most states last month. The letter did not get as much attention as the wide-reaching data request from the Trump Election Commission, which is led by Vice President Mike Pence, who, of course, has a very notorious record in Indiana on voting, led by Mike Pence and hard-right Kansas Secretary of State Kris Kobach. But voting rights advocates told TPM that they find it concerning, if not more so, that they find it just as concerning, if not more so. It's a very clear intent is to purge more and more groups who possibly don't vote the way they want them to vote, League of Women Voters Chris Larson told TPM. Reading the cues in the letter, the National Voter Registration Act stands to be ground zero of coming voter suppression wars, with experts predicting the feds will use it as a pressure states into slimming down their registration rolls. It's indicating that the GOJ is going to be pushing states to take more and more people off the rolls instead of enforcing provisions of the NVRA that assist voters in getting registered and staying on the rolls, said Brenda Wright, Vice President of Policy and Legal Strategies at the Progressive Policy and Legal Group, Demos. Just one more graph. The letter dated June 28th asked states to hand over to the feds all information, including the statutes, regulations, written guidance, internal policies, or database user manuals that determine when states remove from its rolls voters who believe to be dead or have changed addresses. It cites the NVRA, also known as the Motor Voter Law, which sought to streamline the process for registering to vote at the DMV or other government agencies. The law also mandates a reasonable standard of maintenance states must undertake to keep their registration rolls up to date. So, again, that last line means that the burden is going to shift to looking for people to kick off and eliminate and streamline versus broaden access, which is the initial purpose of the motor voter law. Probably actually really one of the best things that Clinton did in office was signing that law in.
Right. Man, whenever I think about voter suppression, I'm automatically reminded of this constant, need for people in the mainstream media to be like, well, maybe the Democrats should abandon identity politics, right? Where you never hear anybody say that about the Republican Party, which, of course, they practice in that. Because
what identity politics you talking about?
What?
Mr.
What identity?
I saw a very arrogant Caribbean sports columnist talking. Right, the Republicans are the white identity party.
Right. And the thing is, it's like, why would we try to appeal to people who aren't white when we got this voter suppression thing? That works just as great. We don't have to get their votes. We eliminate them.
Well, and that's the strategy. And I think that, that was really brought home. And it was funny because that was really brought home in that, that infamous Asif Manvi segment that he did with the local official in North Carolina a couple years ago that was actually cited in a court case, right? And that guy basically did the pivot where he was sort of like, well, yeah, I'm personally sort of racist maybe, but I kind of get that you're not supposed to be anymore. But this isn't about racism. This is just about like clearing the field of people who don't vote for us. And they happen to be black, but they could just as easily be anybody. They could be young people, right? That's like the overlap, that the ascendant America is people who have, it's difficult. They don't necessarily have the same forms of ID. It's not easy, it's not as easy for them to follow these processes. So it's a synchronized effort with Republicans. And, I think it was very, like, was it surprising that, and I think Matt Chrisman of Chapo pointed this out, that, like, the same days that people are tweeting out, how can Republicans stand by a healthcare bill that I think the highest poll numbers I saw was 17%, just a truly abominable piece of legislation that will harm most people. Why do they stand by it? Well, because this letter is getting sent to the states. Because Kris Kobach and Mike Pence, and Kris Kobach is a, virulently extreme xenophobic and deeply dangerous prototype Trump political official.
Yeah.
That's why. I mean, if you can block the vote of people who are disproportionately harmed by what you do, that's synchronized politics. And that's why people need to read, Nancy McLean's work as well, Democracy in Chains. That's what it is.
And, this is where you see the basic and utter, hypocrisy of people who don't vote the same way that we do, where it's like, I'm a patriot, Second Amendment. I mean, like, what's more patriotic than voting, right? You know what I'm saying? Like, what's more central to the idea of this place than we get to participate in, choosing our freaking overlords? It's like, nah, these guns.
Choosing our overlords. That's great.
It's crazy to me, but that's part of the strategy, and you saw it after 2012 where there was like Charles Pierce has this joke about the rebrand, right? The quote unquote rebrand, where it's like, yo, we got to go after Latin voters. Eventually, white.
I have an alternative idea. What about they don't vote, and then we tell people that don't like them that they're rapists?
Yes, we double down on it.
That might also work.
But, that was the talk after 2012. It was about the Republican rebrand, and they're going to run Marco Rubio, and they're going to do all of this crap. And then it's like, no, we'll just suppress the vote. We don't need to get their votes if they can't vote.
Right.
And we'll double down on white identity. And it's been pretty successful, obviously.
Hi, folks. Sam Seder here. We still need your help on our Patreon page. YouTube ads have come back, but not nearly as much as we had before. So if you can help us out, any little bit helps. Head over to our Patreon page right at this URL, and you'll help us keep helping you by making videos